when a child learns that safety comes from thinking ahead of pain. At its core, this archetype is not about intelligence or sensitivity. It is about a child who learned too early that anticipation was survival, that thinking ahead could prevent chaos, abandonment, or emotional collapse. The wound is not overthinking itself. The wound is the loss of innocence, rest, and trust in the present moment. Part 1. High-impact hook and core paradox, 2 to 3 minutes. You don't start overthinking when something goes wrong. You start long before that. It happens in the quiet moments. In the pause before you reply to a text. In the way your body tightens when everything seems fine. In the mental rehearsals you didn't consciously choose, but somehow always perform. You think through every outcome, every tone, every possible reaction. Not because you're dramatic. Not because you enjoy it. But because once, a long time ago, thinking ahead kept you safe. As a child, you learned that the environment could change without warning. That emotions could erupt. That love could withdraw. That peace was conditional. So your mind adapted. It learned to scan, to predict, to prepare, to outthink danger before it arrived. And it worked. It protected you. It made you perceptive, emotionally intelligent, deeply aware. But here's the paradox. The very mechanism that saved you then is slowly exhausting you now. You live in a constant state of mental rehearsal. You struggle to rest without guilt. You analyze yourself more than you experience yourself. You are always one step ahead, and never fully here. And no one sees how heavy that is. Because from the outside, you look capable, controlled, insightful. But inside, there is a child who never learned that it was safe to stop thinking. Part 2. Definition and psychological authority. To understand overthinking rooted in childhood trauma, we have to stop calling it a bad habit. It is not a flaw. It is a survival adaptation embedded in the nervous system. When a child grows up in emotionally unpredictable environments marked by emotional neglect, inconsistency, parentification, or unspoken tension, the brain reorganizes itself around anticipation. One of the core mechanisms here is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is not just watching for danger. It is living inside the future. The child's nervous system learns. If I can predict what happens next, I can reduce pain. This pulls excessive activity into the default mode network, the brain system responsible for internal narratives, self-referential thinking, and mental time travel. In safe environments, this network turns off when we rest. In traumatized environments, it stays on. Always running. Always simulating. Always preparing. Now layer in parentification, when a child emotionally or practically takes on adult responsibility. These children don't just overthink situations. They overthink people. They track moods. They monitor emotional shifts. They become experts in emotional microsignals. Not because they want control, but because unpredictability once meant danger. Over time, this becomes an emotional neglect schema. The internal belief forms quietly. My needs are secondary. My value comes from being prepared, helpful, or emotionally useful. Rest is earned, not given. This doesn't disappear with age. It becomes identity. Overthinking, then, is not excessive thought. It is a nervous system that never learned safety without vigilance. Part 3. Emotional cost and philosophical weight. Carl Jung once wrote, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." And this is the invisible grief of the overthinker. Not dramatic suffering, not obvious trauma, but the quiet mourning of a self that never got to be spontaneous. You sacrificed authenticity for attunement. You sacrificed rest for readiness. You sacrificed presence for protection. And no one applauds that loss. Because it looks like competence. You fear rest, not consciously, but somatically. Because rest once meant vulnerability. And vulnerability once meant consequences. So even joy becomes complicated. You can't enjoy the moment without analyzing how long it will last. You can't receive love without wondering when it will change. You can't make a simple decision without imagining regret. You don't just live. You review your life as you're living it. This creates what philosophers call existential fatigue. The exhaustion of always being responsible for outcomes that were never meant to be yours. The core fear underneath all of it is simple and devastating. If I stop paying attention, something bad will happen. So you stay alert. You stay sharp. You stay tired. And you grieve quietly for the version of you who might have lived more freely. Part 4. adult manifestation, and the unlearning process. As adults, these children don't disappear. They become high-functioning overthinkers. You might recognize yourself here. In relationships, you overanalyze messages, tone shifts, pauses. You feel responsible for emotional harmony. You fear being too much, yet feel unseen. In career, you prepare excessively. You struggle to delegate. You fear making mistakes more than missing opportunities. You tie your worth to competence. In self-worth, you measure value through usefulness. You feel uneasy when you're not improving, fixing, or anticipating. In boundaries, you over-explain. You justify your needs. You preemptively accommodate others. In emotional regulation, your body rarely feels neutral. You oscillate between mental overstimulation and emotional numbness. In identity, you don't know who you are without responsibility. Silence feels unsafe. Stillness feels undeserved. These are not personality traits. They are coping strategies that overstayed their welcome. Healing does not begin by forcing your mind to stop overthinking. It begins with witnessing, naming the pattern without shaming it, recognizing the child who learned that thinking was protection, letting awareness replace self-gaslighting. Unlearning starts when you realize you are no longer in the environment that required this level of vigilance. Part 5. Healing, Conclusion, and Affirmation, 3 to 4 minutes. Healing for the overthinking survivor is not about becoming carefree overnight. It is about teaching the nervous system that safety no longer depends on anticipation. This happens through inner child reparenting, responding to yourself with the consistency you never received. Through shadow work, meeting the parts of you that fear rest, softness, and unstructured time. Through nervous system regulation, breath work, somatic awareness, slowing down without explanation. And most importantly, by choosing softness over survival mode. Not all at once. Not perfectly, but deliberately. Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. Part 6. Integration, Rebuilding Trust with the Present Moment. There is a phase of healing no one prepares you for. It comes after insight. After you finally understand why you overthink. After you've named the trauma. After you've traced the pattern back to childhood. And yet, your body still braces. This is because understanding heals the story. But integration heals the nervous system. Integration is where you begin rebuilding trust with the present moment. Not by forcing yourself to be mindful. Not by shaming yourself when the thoughts return. But by practicing something far more radical. Staying when your mind wants to leave. Overthinkers don't dissociate by going numb. They dissociate by going upward. Into analysis. Into meaning-making. Into mental escape. So integration looks like gently returning to the body. Feeling your feet on the ground. Noticing your breath without controlling it. Letting sensations exist without explanation. At first, this feels wrong. Unsafe. Unproductive. Because your nervous system equates stillness with danger. This is where somatic trust building matters. Small acts. Micro moments. Pausing before responding, and realizing nothing collapses. Letting a message sit unanswered, and noticing you're still okay. Allowing a decision to be imperfect, and surviving the discomfort. Each time you do this, you are teaching your system something new. The present moment is not an emergency. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your mind begins to loosen its grip. Not because it's forced to, but because it no longer has to hold everything together alone. Part 7. Identity Beyond Survival and Final Integration, 3 to 4 minutes. There is one final fear beneath overthinking that rarely gets named. It is not fear of failure, not fear of judgment, not even fear of abandonment. It is the fear of who you would be without survival mode. Because for a long time, vigilance gave you identity. I am the one who thinks ahead. I am the responsible one. I am the emotionally intelligent one. I am the one who holds it together. So healing can feel like loss. If I stop overthinking, who am I then? This is where the deepest integration happens. You begin to discover that beneath hyper-responsibility is not emptiness, but aliveness, creativity that was postponed, desire that was muted, playfulness that felt unsafe, anger that was never allowed space. You don't lose yourself when you stop overthinking. You meet yourself, and that meeting is tender, because it reveals a truth that may bring tears before relief. You never needed to earn safety through exhaustion. You were worthy of care even when you were confused, even when you were quiet, even when you didn't know what would happen next. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once said, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." What you are feeling now, as awareness grows, is not failure. It is freedom approaching a system that learned to survive confinement. So go gently. Let thinking soften into sensing. Let preparation give way to participation. Let your life be lived, not constantly reviewed. And remember this. Healing does not mean you will never overthink again. It means overthinking will no longer be where you live. You are allowed to rest inside moments now. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to trust what unfolds without preemptively managing it. The goal was never to become less deep. It was to become less burdened. Not fixed, not optimized, but whole. And wholeness, finally, feels like exhaling. After holding your breath for years,